I'm not a Billy Graham. I'm not a Billy Sundays. I'm not a Shakespeare. I'm not a Abraham. I'm not a Elvis Presley. I do things that none of them can do. I'm Howard Finster, and I'm here today. I got my first calling to paint. I was pastoring churches, and while I was pastoring churches at Christmas time, I'd see a lot of little kids that wouldn't have a new bicycle, you know, and they looked so pitiful. And I started building bicycles, rebuilding bicycles for poor kids, you know. And I got to doing that, and I got to patching on them bicycles, and I patched with a little brush, you know, and somehow it didn't do good, and I got to patching with my finger. So I just tucked this finger here and dipped it down in paint and started patching on this bicycle. And I dipped in to get some more paint, and I looked to see if I had enough paint on my finger. And when I did, there was a face on my finger. Can you see that finger right there that face is on? Well, that's what happened. I dipped this finger in paint and come up with it, and there's a face on that finger right there. And as something come to me like a voice, a soundless voice said, "Paint sacred art." And I said to that voice, I said, "I can't do that." I said, "Artists can do that, but not me." I said, "I've seen them do it, but not me." And it come to me again. How do you know you can't? How do you know you can't? How do you know you can't? And that dawned on me. How do I know? So I just reached in my billfold, and I took out my billfold, and I took a dollar bill out of it, and I was thinking all the time, I think to myself, how do I know that I can't paint? And so I took my billfold out, and I got a dollar bill out of my billfold with George Washington on it. And I taped this up on a piece of plywood, and I put it up like this, and I began to draw George Washington off of that. Now, back when I was a kid, the boys would mark their hand with faces on their hand, and they'd wink at one another in school during the classes with their hands, like this right here. See these two eyes on my hand? And them boys and girls would wink at one another like that with their hand. Well, I knew about painting like that when I was a little kid, but this one up here was a different one. This is not winking at the girls. This your face was calling me to paint sacred art. And there it was on my, and this face was looking into my face, you know, right up at me. And how do you know you can't? How do you know you can't? Well, I took that dollar bill there, taped it on plywood, and I began to draw George Washington off of this dollar bill. And the little school kids that got out of school, and they gathered up behind me watching me paint George Washington off of a dollar bill. And we built a church there. And I wanted to build a garden on that church property, and I couldn't get support for it. And so I come and just kept working on my backyard for my garden. That's all I had was my backyard. And I collect the invention of mankind. Anything that man invented, I try to put a sample of it in this garden. And my garden is educational. My garden is a visionary garden. And therefore, I also collect the creations of God. And that's three things I do at Paradise Garden. I represent the inventors, I represent the creation of God, and I represent the Holy Bible and my visions about God. And you're in Paradise Garden now. It's a city block, a block of sculpture. It represents the invention of mankind. It represents the flowers and food that people pick berries here, they pick grapes here. This is kind of a second Garden of Eden, you might say, that people expect to find here, and they come and they enjoy it. And I hardly ever quit painting art. And when I quit, I may just quit for good, you know. But while I'm painting art, I got to do it. I've been painting art for 12 years now, night and day. And I never get through wanting to paint art, but I get tired sometimes. My body gets tired. My age is caught up with me, and I just work on over that. And so a lot of times I work feeling bad because I found out it don't hurt you no worse to work feeling bad than it does to lay around on your bottom feeling bad. Sometimes you can lay around on your bottom feeling bad and you feel worse. You get up and go to work feeling bad and you might get to feeling better. People don't know. They just won't put no sacrifice. One day I was out in the yard and it seemed like God Almighty spoke to me. And he asked me a question. Howard, do you want money or do you want wisdom? That's what he asked me. Do you want money or do you want wisdom? I said, God, I want wisdom like no man has ever had before. And after that, I began to have these major visions. And my faith is that God can unravel any question that this earth has. And He can do it through me as an instrument. And that's sort of like art. You got to find yourself. You got to keep your eyes on what you're looking for. If you want to be a big artist, you want to be a great artist, not all of that. You got to look into the art life. You got to study art. You got to keep art on your mind. But when you go around with a party on your mind for 5 days that you're going to have Saturday night, go around with 2 or 3 pretty girls on your mind that you're going to have a date with 2 weeks from now, you just well to forget it. You got to eradicate stuff like that and get your mind on what you're doing. And study art. They don't study art. I study art sometimes from the time I go to bed till I wake up, and I go to seeing art. I see new art. I got my mind on art. I do art. That's what God wants me to do. Sometimes when I'm laying in the bed at 4 o'clock of the morning, something will come on my mind. It's something I never heard before. It's beautiful words, just beautiful words I never heard before. And sometimes I ignore them, say I'll do that in the morning, and I forget them and never remember them anymore. I've had things that come to me, I'd give anything if it come to me again. I can't get them no more. So I have this book at all times, and I have that vision. I get up out of the bed and write down and date it and what it was about and make a text of it. And then when I get around to it, then I try to draw that and make it visual to the world, what I've seen. And this book right here has got all kinds of verses and things that comes to me. It's like this little verse here, how could anybody stumble over the message into hell without doing it on their own? And then I have all kinds of sayings that comes to me, and this little book is full of them, all kinds of sayings. And I don't know how many books I got like this that's full of things that comes to me just right out of the heavens, and things I've never seen before. And them things when I get them things on a painting, everybody loves the sayings. They think they're great sayings. And they are great sayings. They were great to me, and when I write them, it's great to them. Like one woman told me one time, says, Howard, when I read your painting, says, I cried. I said, well, when I done that painting, I cried. I made up a little song in Washington, D.C. when they was giving me a private interview in Alan Jabour's office. They said, well, it's talking on my painting, how hard you paint and all, what else do you do? I said, I make up songs and sing them on the spot. Oh, this one right here, Ray Kass here, you take him here, and of course you got the good dimension cut out here. You set this up on the episcope, and you get the actual outside image of the ears and eyeballs and everything. When you get them there, then you cut it into a stencil and you got it on file. If you ever want to use them, it'll save you half a day's work. And another thing, you need to finish this up and cut dimensions of the galluses, even the buckles, and the neck piece, and the pockets, and everything on here. You cut it into dimensions. See, like that right there. Right there. Okay. Yeah, you see there? That's Ray Kass right there. You cut these all out. This is a little dog I cut out, and I cut him out this size. And you can get episcopes, you can get a cheap one that work fine for $10 or $15. You draw what you want to draw and put it under your episcope, and you can make this dog 8 foot long. Your episcope will flash it on the wall, and you mark it off on your paper, and then you cut it into a dimension. You can just use scrap paper or anything so it's wide on one side, and you cut it into a dimension, and you put it in your file, and you make any size hound that you want to make, from 8 inches to 8 foot. So episcope is a great, speeds up production in your art. And then if you want to do a photograph of yourself, you can cut the photograph out, like me and Peter Paul here, and lay this under your episcope, and you can blow this up to any size you want. And then you mark around it, and then you make it into a dimension, and then you put that in your files. You put the name of the person it is on your files and the date of their birth or whatever, and you have that in your files. I have about over 1,000, I guess, dimensions that I make of things that I might want to use, and you can always blow them up. The angel could represent several different things. This angel here in particular represents my visions of other structures and other worlds. I have visions of other structures. Sometimes in a vision, out there in space somewhere, I'll be down below a mountain and I can see great domes sticking up, and I can't see all of the building. I just see the top of it, and I take what I see at the top of them and go by it and try to do the bottoms of them. And so I represent my visions of other structures and other architects. And then the faces all over this, I rub them in with my fingers, and then when they get dry, I begin to look at them, and I find faces of people I've seen. I found my piano player on one of them faces one time, and they're images, and they represent the resting souls, and they represent the party of people that's gone on and been buried or criminated or whatever, and people that went in the ocean and drowned and everything. All of them represents the population of the dead. So this painting right here has 16 structures on it, and you have one brush and you have this paint, and you don't make no mistakes on this, and you don't trace it out before you start. You do this right off of your brush. You see the design of a mansion, you do it right there, and you don't make a quarter of an inch mistake. And when you do this one, you do it from your brain, and when you get to this type, you do it with your brain, and when you get to this type, you do it with your brain. And all them 16 structures there that I outline, and I know just about how they're going to look when I outline them. That's like an empty bucket, and then when I start putting the details on it, it becomes to develop. Right now I'm fixing to roof a house here, and that's according to how big that you want your shingles. And you have to come back here, and you have to get the angle and the pitch of this gable right here. And you get the pitch of that gable, and go down through there, and you crisscross these shingles just like you're actually putting the shingles on it. And you come on down with these shingles, whatever size you want them, down here to the bottom, and you roof this house just like you're roofing any house. I do all kinds of animals in the God's world you can think of. It comes on my mind. Every animal on this board passed through my brain cell. My brain cell is like a gigantic computer, and when I see things, there it is. And when I open my brain cell up on the animal subject, there they are. And people ask me, why did you make this and like that, and why did you make that like that? It's just like, why is what's on your camera? You're taking pictures now, you're getting negatives, nobody can see them. But when them negatives are developed, you see what's there. That's the way of my brain cells. It's like a camera my brain cells are. They shoot everything that comes before my eyes. My eyes carry it straight to my brain cells, and I computerize my own brain cells with my visions, and therefore when I have a change, I develop them, just like you develop this film you're making. I develop them, and this is one that I developed. This elephant is one that I developed. It had to pass through my eyes, and from my eyes to my brain cell, and then had to conscientiously be drawn out with paint and enamel. But I hope someday all of you get a piece of my work of some kind, if you want it, or a poster or something. And a vision is to be interpreted by our educators. Our universities and our research people should study my visions. They should get the answer to my visions and tell me something about what my visions are. Because necessarily the Bible said in the last days he'd multiply men of visions. He says without a vision the people will perish. I'm between the future and the past. And I look at the future and I look at the past. But since I've been sitting here working on this painting, I've seen a congregation 20 years from now looking at one of my shows. I could hear the critics, and I could hear the kids talking about it, like they're talking about Shakespeare or Abraham Lincoln. And I see future things in my visions, but I don't verify them and don't make a statement that they're facts. I just see visions of it. Just a little tack in the shangality-roo. Just a little tack in the shangality-roo. I'm just a little tack in the shingle of your roof to hold your house together. Come on back, stay with me. Come on back, just live with me. Come on back, stay with me. Let's make a little house what it ought to be. Make a little house what it ought to be. Just a little nail in the plank of your wall. Just a little nail in the plank of your wall. I'm just a little nail in the plank of your wall to hold your house together. Come on back, stay with me. Come on back, let me see. Come on back, stay with me. Let's make a little house what it ought to be. Make a little house what it ought to be. Just a little rock in the pillar of your house. Just a little rock in the pillar of your house. I'm just a little rock in the pillar of your house. Hold your house together.